Namaskar and welcome to Samvad. It has been a year since Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave Bangladesh in what was, for all purposes, a soft coup. Today, the Bangladesh we knew seems to be not visible. What is visible is an increase in radicalization, economy in a tailspin, and social harmony getting worse by the day. Masks of social change and fight against authoritarianism have fallen by the wayside as the usurpers seem to be equally, if not more, authoritarian. To discuss the changes in Bangladesh, we have with us Ambassador Veena Sikri. Ambassador Veena Sikri is a career diplomat with the Indian Foreign Service. She has served as High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Malaysia, and Consul General in Hong Kong. She has also served as Director General of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations in New Delhi. She is currently working on a book titled The Geopolitics of Bangladesh. Welcome to Samvad, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure is all mine, ma'am. It's an honor having you on the show. Ma'am, when this soft coup, I'll refer to this as a soft coup because I find no other word to describe what happened in Bangladesh last year. It was said that it was a spontaneous students led uprising. Now, you know better Bangladesh better than most people do. How organically spontaneous and student led was this uprising?
Well, you're right to use the word soft coup. I use normally the word regime change operation. And I use this word because actually Yunus himself, the chief advisor, when he was speaking in New York in September last year, when he went there for the UNGA, he was speaking at a private occasion, and he actually himself said that this was a meticulously designed operation. And he said, don't think it happened just like that. And he introduced his own private secretary, who is now actually an advisor in the Yunus regime. He introduced him as the master brain, as the mastermind behind the operation. So obviously it was a very well planned event. There was no spontaneity about it at all. And the students' part of it was a facade which fell away very quickly. And I say this because, yes, they did use this issue of the reservation for children of freedom fighters that had been there in the government of Bangladesh right from 1972 onwards. But we know that this was not spontaneous at all because it's the Jamaat Islami who actually had taken this issue up on the eve of the 2014 elections in 2013 and on the eve of the 2019 elections in 2018. So, Jamaat Islami had already brought this issue up. And in fact, in response to that, in response to many students who had come and spoken to Sheikh Hasina, she had actually changed the rules and she had actually given up the reservation. So to use that an issue on which Sheikh Hasina had already given up, and which the Supreme Court itself on the 21st of July, said no, this reservation cannot remain, and he reduced it to 5% or less or something like that. So let's forget about the students. It was a Jamaat Islami backed coup. Regime change, soft coup. Pakistan was very much behind it. They were the conduit and they were working through Jamaat Islami. And this ties in, of course, with the fact that Jamaat Islami had already used this reservation quota issue earlier and had not that time. So it was really a Jamaat Islami and Islami Chhatra Shibir, which is the youth wing of the Jamaat Islami, the students wing. It was really their operation. And any other genuine students, who may have been there were quickly, excluded. And today they're nowhere. In fact, today when this new party, so-called Students' Party, NCP, National Citizens Party, is trying to get the support of students, they're not getting it. So, they're trying to get control of universities, they're not succeeding. So it is very clear that it was not a spontaneous students' uprising.
Ma'am, I'll just stay with the history for a bit because both Sheikh Mujib and Sheikh Hasina, they are accused of being authoritarian. Now, Islami is one of the very rare parties in any country which had opposed the freedom struggle which Bangladesh was going through. So do you think that both Sheikh Mujib and Hasina were very soft on Jamaat-e-Islami and allowed them to flourish and prosper to an extent where they could indulge or even think of a regime change?
You know, the history of Bangladesh is that you're right that when Sheikh Mujib came to power, and in 1972, he did ban Jamaat-e-Islami. It was banned. In fact, their Amir at that time
Hmm.
left and went to Pakistan. But then the circumstances became such, he died in 1975. Sheikh Mujib was cruelly assassinated. All his family was assassinated on August 15th, 1975. And at that time, after that, the powers that came to be, particularly Ziaur Rahman and then, of course, President Ershad as well, they completely reversed all the earlier decisions. Beginning with Ziaur Rahman, he restored the Jamaat-e-Islami, they came back, they started functioning. So actually, the Jamaat-e-Islami was brought back into the picture. And this is what created a huge kind of I would say it brought in the issue of religion in a way that in Bangladesh was completely unexpected, because that was not the basis on which they fought for liberation. Their fight for liberation was very much a fight which was based on democracy, based on nationalism, which is all in their 1972 constitution, secularism, social justice. These were the issues, these were the pillars of the 1972 constitution and still are the pillars of the constitution. But the bringing in of the Jamaat-e-Islami, the revival of the Jamaat-e-Islami allowed them to even form a government with Khaledazia from 2001 to 2006. They were an alliance partner with the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, for 5 years. And now, of course, they are the power behind the throne. They have, very cleverly decided to stay behind the throne. And they have put Md Yunus as, I would say, you can describe it as a puppet maybe, but he is just the voice of the Jamaat-e-Islami. He is doing whatever they tell him to do. He has not shown on his own any vision or any, broad picture for what he wants in Bangladesh. He keeps saying students, students, students. And the NCP, the National Citizens Party, is supposed to be the king's party, his party. So the people who owe allegiance to him among the students, they have formed this NCP. But many of them are also originally Islami Chhatra Shibir and so on.
I'll come back to the present now, ma'am, because since Muhammad Yunus had both Chinese and Western support, which is a very rarity, which hardly happens, but he has both their support. The constitutional legitimacy of his takeover was never challenged, and the focus was only on the authoritarian regime of Sheikh Hasina and how it was very unpopular, and she was not a democrat as per the opposition. Now, how legitimate, my question, ma'am, is that how legitimate is Muhammad Yunus's government, interim government, in the eyes of Bangladeshi constitution?
Well, today, in the eyes of the constitution, they're completely illegitimate. That is very clear. Because, very surprisingly, they were sworn in on the 8th of August last year, 2024. And they took the oath of allegiance on the 1972 constitution as amended from time to time. But the 1972 constitution, as it existed last August, did not have any provision for an interim regime, because under the amendments made by Sheikh Hasina, this had been removed because the then Supreme Court of Bangladesh had given a verdict that in a parliamentary democracy, you cannot have a caretaker government, because the caretaker government automatically implies a non-elected head of government. And in a parliamentary democracy, you cannot have a non-elected head of government. So, according to that decision of the Supreme Court, the article pertaining to the caretaker government had been removed. It is true that, yes, subsequently, as you know, that the students, the mawocracy which prevailed, they even surrounded all the Supreme Court judges and the Chief Justice. They surrounded the governor of the Bank of Bangladesh. They forced them to resign just by sheer mawocracy, by surrounding them. And when the new governors of the bank or the Supreme Court judges were appointed, of course, again, not really in keeping with the constitution. I'll explain in a minute why. These new people, they said, "Oh, we want to we will restore the caretaker government." All right, assuming they want to restore it, assuming the article comes back, even then, under the original provision of the caretaker government, it's two things are mandated. One is that it must be a neutral, non-party government. Now, this provision has been completely violated by the Yunus regime, by the people he appointed, because all the Islamist parties are in the caretaker government. Now, for example, the Hizb ut-Tahrir is there, Mahfouz Alam is from Hizb ut-Tahrir, the Islami Andolan Bangladesh is there, and the advisor to the Islami Andolan Bangladesh is as an advisor. Then the political organization called Hifazat Islam, they are there, and their he is as an advisor. So with all these Islamist parties in the government, it is not a neutral, non-party government. So it is completely illegitimate and unconstitutional by that means. The second criteria for a caretaker government is that they have to organize free, fair, and inclusive elections within 90 days. And this government has not done that. Rather, they have gone on and on saying, oh, we want reforms, and reforms must be there before the elections. And, all reforms are something that only an elected government can do.
True.
And, this business of wanting constitutional reform, inviting even non-Bangladeshis to head those committees like Professor Ali Riaz and so on, and, talking about constitutional reform, police reform, electoral reform, just delaying and saying that, oh, the situation is so bad that we cannot have elections. Now, all this has invited the unhappiness of the people of Bangladesh. And they themselves are now saying that this is the constitutionally invalid government, unconstitutional and illegitimate. So this talk about the Yunus regime being illegitimate and unconstitutional is the talk of Bangladesh very openly. Nobody is calling them a constitutional government at all.
So they were supposed to hold free and fair elections within 90 days. Now it is said that under army pressure, they are scheduling the election for February 2026. I was reading the Daily Star of this morning, ma'am, and it is now quoting the National Citizens Party. So the chief coordinator of the National Citizens Party, Nasiruddin Patiwari, he has said that the upcoming election cannot be held in February next year. And he says, and I quote the newspaper report, if the polls are held before completing reforms, the government must return the lives of my brothers who were killed in the uprising. He has alleged that the elections were being planned under the same fascist constitution and system. Now, the NCP convener Nahid Islam says that the equation is not yet complete. Those who think they had figured it out already are on the wrong track. We made concessions last year and in the July declaration, but in the July charter, we will not give even a 1% concession. Is the election going to be held, ma'am?
Well, there is a lot of talk, a lot of skepticism among the people whether the elections will at all be held. And this is precisely because of what you have just read out, that the National Citizens Party, which is the King's Party, which is owing allegiance to Md Yunus, they are opposing the elections because they have no popularity. They cannot even organize a rally. And we saw even in Gopalganj, they are trying to, force the popularity of themselves. They're trying to hold rallies, and in Gopalganj, they even wanted to desecrate the mausoleum in Tumipara of Sheikh Mujib. But the people came and opposed them. Not even Awami Leaguers, because Awami Leaguers had either been thrown in jail, all the Gopalganj Awami Leaguers, or many of them had been killed in the most cruel manner, so that it was really a popular uprising. It was just the ordinary people who, even children, even women, they came and said, no, we don't want the NCP here. And then the army intervened to fire on unarmed civilians, and many died. So this has actually been a big blot on the army's record, because they have come in Gopalganj, which happened, as you know, just about, I think, 10 days ago or so. And so that shows how the NCP is not a popular party at all. And because of that lack of popularity, number one. Number two, the Jamaat Islami themselves, although they are paying some kind of lip service to the election dates, but they themselves don't want elections, because they anticipated that with the Awami League out of the way, as you know, the Awami League activities have been banned in the month of May. They have been banned. This is now being challenged, and Sheikh Hasina has today given a statement and so on. But so the Awami League the activities stand banned. The party is there, but the activities stand banned. So the Jamaat Islami, they saw what they expected, that a sudden spurt in Jamaat Islami popularity is not happening. They're still at that same level of 10% or so, give or take a few, that they have always been in every election. And so they're very disturbed that they may not get the vote. Now, BNP is the other major party, and BNP themselves have been saying, although I feel that in the BNP there's a split, because there is a faction of the BNP that is very pro-Jamaat Islami. So that faction is a little separate, and there's another faction which is liberal, and which has always said, yes, Awami League must participate in the elections and so on. So even the BNP, they too know that unless elections are held early, they will never be held. So BNP has been pushing, Mirza Fakhrul, the general secretary, pushing again and again for elections by December. The army is pushing for elections by December. So this is a kind of a tension building up on the question about when the elections will be held. Reforms are absolutely, this is a non-starter, because reforms, first of all, these kind, changing the constitution and recommending all, this can only be done by an elected parliament. And I think the Bangladeshis are very committed to democracy. They're committed to the principle of democracy. They want a democratic system. They don't want, in the name of overcoming the so-called fascism or authoritarianism of Sheikh Hasina, you are now going in for another authoritarian regime, because the one word by a political party representative means that your elections won't be held. So this I think is really not acceptable. And of course, Daily Star carrying it. Daily Star is known to be very soft on
It is.
Chief Advisor Md Yunus. So let's see. I think everybody is realizing that this is too much of a farce that the interim regime and now this newly created NCP is carrying out.
Even if the elections are held and with Awami League being banned, it is the largest party in Bangladesh and for long a very popular party also, despite what these people say. How legitimate will that election will be in the eyes of the people, first of all, and secondly, how will the world view it?
Well, I think that, it is very important that the Awami League must participate. Otherwise, this regime, this Muhammad Yunus regime, is doing exactly what they were accusing Sheikh Hasina of doing. And the people were made unhappy with Sheikh Hasina, saying that, look, they're not allowing you to vote. And actually, let me tell you, it was the BNP themselves who decided not to participate in the elections. In fact, if the BNP had participated in the last election or in the one before that, they may well have won, because in Bangladesh, anti-incumbency is very normal. And, saying, okay, now so-and-so has been there 10 years, now let me vote the other way. It is a very normal phenomenon in Bangladesh. So it is quite likely that BNP would have come to power. But they chose not to participate, and then they blamed Sheikh Hasina for not allowing them to participate. So I think that if the present regime tries to do the same thing, then the people will say the same thing about them. It will not be accepted, number one. Number two, let us see whether, the Awami League can really be prevented from participating. I think that I think there should be a huge furor among the people about that. I think the powers that be. And there are some organizations in Bangladesh who are regularly doing poll surveys. They're regularly doing opinion polls and seeing how much support is with different people. And according to some recent poll surveys done by these people, these organizations, who are independent organizations, not affiliated to any party, they say that the Awami League vote bank is more or less intact. That the Awami League vote bank has not been dented by the changes of the last 1 year. And also the BNP vote bank is also intact. So you have once again the situation where you have 40% of Awami League, roughly, give or take, 40% BNP, give or take, then, maybe about 10% or so Jamaat Islami, and then they have Jatiya Party and other smaller parties. Jamaat Islami thinks that if they have totally abandoned the BNP as a potential partner, which was a big shock to the BNP, but they are forcing or persuading the Islamist parties to join hands and say that if all your 1% vote comes to us, then we'll have more, kind of thing. But let us see what happens. Be that as it may, I think that the fact of Awami League not participating will not be accepted. And the second thing that has happened, the statement that you just read out by the NCP leader, he's talking about the July Charter, we compromised, etc., that word that he used. It is true that originally the July Charter. They wanted a July proclamation. Now they call it a July Declaration. It's not a charter, it's not a proclamation, it's just a July Declaration. And they wanted that to completely talk about a second republic. They wanted forget about the original constitution, forget about everything else, anew. Like, in France, you've had Second Republic and so on. So this is what they wanted. But I think that ultimately the regime took the issue in their hands, saying that, no, we will do something that is acceptable to everybody. And so they've come out with this July declaration, which is, I mean, it hints at various things, but it's all right. It's average. This is obviously not acceptable to the NCP. They want a much stronger issue. But if they are trying to think that they will do something to force the hands of the people, it will not happen because they don't have the popularity. So I do think that popularity is very important. And the third factor that you must take on board is that a new organization has been formed on the same day, 5th of August, that the July Declaration was read out by Md Yunus. There was a new organization announced called Moncho 1971, Ekatarar Moncho. It was like a platform, a civic organization. And this organization has only one agenda, which is to protect in every manner the values of the liberation war.
Okay.
So that is the it's yet not a political party. It's a civic platform, and it's invited everybody to come on board, whether you're a freedom fighter or a student, or to come on board and protect the values of the liberation war, protect what the liberation war stood for. Now, I think this is very significant because, right from the beginning, from the first day, 5th of August 2024, even as Sheikh Hasina's plane was leaving, we saw that in Bangladesh, throughout Bangladesh, particularly in Dhaka, but certainly outside also, two things happened. One thing was the attack on the minorities. So Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, and even on the Muslim minorities, Sufis and Ahmadiyas, they were bitterly attacked. Their houses were burned. There were rapes and lynchings and killings. Property was taken over. Businesses were destroyed. That was absolutely terrible. The second thing that they did, and in equal measure, I'm not saying which is more important to them or the other, the second thing that these people did was to attack every organization or statue or place connected to the liberation war. So Awami League people were already under attack. Many of them were killed, and many of them were, actually even more were killed afterwards. But, the statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his house in Dhanmondi, all these were under attack. Any institution named after him, they were desperate to create this really hatred against the liberation war. And this is what actually aroused the negative feelings of the people right from day one. But they didn't like, number one, even the factor of the attack on minorities. It's not good for Bangladesh in the international arena. Even on the very first day, you're attacking minorities and killing them. And I know I've got feedback from so many minorities there who said that they were told their houses were burnt or their land was taken away. They said, okay, here's the money, leave the country. They wanted those people to go. They wanted to get rid of all the minorities, whether Sufis or Ahmadiyas or Hindus or Buddhists or Christians. But this time, quite remarkably, as against 1971 or subsequently when there have been attacks on the minorities and the people left in large number, this time the younger generation said, we are not going anywhere. We are staying. We are citizens of this country and we want our rights. So this was again a shock to the so-called perpetrators of this of the so-called regime change or soft coup, as you've called it. So those issues were prominent in the minds of the people right from the beginning. And now this person saying that you read out what has come in the Daily Star, it only shows that the passage of 1 year means nothing. The people have not changed their mind. They are still attached to the liberation war, and they're still attached to those values. The feeling that they fought against oppression and they fought against colonization virtually because the Pakistan government colonized them as much as the British did earlier. Even after 47, it was the Pakistan government which colonized them. So they were fighting against that. They wanted their own. And of course, Pakistan is trying to bring all that back again. They're bringing their army officers back again. They're bringing their trade back again. They're trying to make a client state out of Bangladesh. And of course, Jamaat Islami is not opposed to that at all, but many of the people are.
So, ma'am, I'll add to what you have said about the attack on the minorities and the attack on Awami League and all the monuments of the of the liberation struggle. There has been a very concerted anti-India feeling, which was there to an extent already before this happened. I mean, there is an anti-India feeling. They are reaching out to Pakistan. ISI officers are stationed, although they deny that. But the fact remains that they are stationed. Lalpur Munihat airport being developed, which is so close to the chicken snake. And very strangely, there is, like Pakistan, the American and the Chinese interests somehow converge. Throughout the world, there are daggers drawn, but somehow Pakistan and Bangladesh, their interests seem to be converging. So, what are the security implications for India out of this?
Yeah. Let me tell you, you're right about the anti-Indian feeling, because this was part of the whole uh, what they were whipping up amongst the people. As I told you, this was a very meticulously designed regime change operation. And we know now, we know who did it, who did it when, that they had actually, they were using the students to whip up anti-Sheikh Hasina feeling, and saying that, look, she's done this wrong, that wrong. Come on, your rights are being affected. So they did that. But whenever they would be anti-Sheikh Hasina, they would also be anti-Indian. And they would link the two, that everything she's done is because of India. So you have to hate India because they have done all this to you. Now, the thing is that we do know that Sheikh Hasina, there were two things. I'll say two things about her regime. One is that as opposed to the khaledazia regime, which is when I was High Commissioner there, where Khaldazia's regime and Jamaat Islami, they didn't care about India's security concerns. So whether it was the Northeast insurgent groups or anything else, they just wanted to override India's security concerns and call in Pakistan. It was, for me, it's very much a deja vu what's happening today, because I've been through this the time when I was there. So they were trying to bring it back again. But in the meanwhile, under Sheikh Hasina, 15 years, two things have happened. First of all, Sheikh Hasina respected India's security concern. And because of that, India and Bangladesh were able to build up a very prosperous bilateral economic relationship. And that gave Bangladesh growth of 6% and above for 15 years, which is remarkable. It took them out of the least developed country category, and it was a remarkable achievement and mutually beneficial. So, we were talking about our connectivity, relationship with Northeast, and they got, through that, Bangladesh got access to Northeast markets, and they were selling their products there. So it was really mutually beneficial. But then the Yunus regime, what they did as part of the anti-India regime and part of pressure from Pakistan, they tried to stop the trade with India. So, like, if India is exporting to Bangladesh cotton yarn or man-made yarn or man-made fiber or man-made cloth or cotton cloth or denim, so on, all this were inputs into Bangladesh's own ready-made export industry. So when you stop that, so the regime of Yunus tried to put in, oh, we will not get it by the land route. If you want to send, okay, fine, but send it by air route or whatever it is. Now, obviously, that meant huge delays for the Bangladesh industrialists. So his order started getting cancelled, and factories started closing down, jobs were getting lost, and that situation prevails even today. So, because if you cannot get the access to products or inputs as quickly as possible within 2-3 days by the land route, it was 2-3 days, at most 4 days. Now it is weeks. They're telling the people in there, buy from Pakistan, buy from USA, buy from Brazil. I mean, those things take weeks and weeks to come, you see. So obviously this has led to a huge economic downturn in Bangladesh, and their rate of growth has halved. Inflation is very high. There is joblessness. There is no economy running at all. A lot of very useful projects have been stopped. That entire, huge 8 to 10 billion credits, all those projects are more or less in the doldrums. So it's a very bad economic situation, and the people have realized why. They've realized what they were getting out of the very beneficial, mutually beneficial cooperation with India. So that too is another point that has made the people very unhappy. And they said, we want this, lawlessness. Crime is very serious in Bangladesh because there is complete lawlessness. They're not able to control. You spoke in the beginning about that, oh, so many people have died. Like this guy said, oh, my colleagues have died in the July uprising. But at the same time, the same people who did the July uprising killed so many policemen in the hundreds and thousands. They looted the thanas, they stole the weapons, and with the same weapons, they killed the policemen. So now, and in fact, one of the original Home Advisor, Shakawat, he even talked about it and he was dismissed from his post immediately. So everybody knows what the reality is. And that part they don't want to talk about. They have taken indemnity for themselves against that. So if you're going to do an inquiry on maybe Sheikh Hasina's violence, then what about the rest of it? We have to do a complete inquiry, isn't it, on both aspects. So there are a lot of issues that are now coming up in the forefront. And I think that Yunus regime is not comfortable at all. And I think that if they try to postpone the elections, it will be even worse. But to hold the elections, two criteria are very essential. Firstly, the election must be free, fair, and inclusive. The Awami League and any other registered party must be able to take part. And secondly, there must be a new caretaker government. But this caretaker government has not been able to hold elections in 90 days. They no longer have the right to exist. There should be a new caretaker government. And with the new caretaker government, within 90 days, the election should be held. That should be the situation.
Ironically, it was said by many people at that time because with Md Yunus in charge, economy would thrive. But ironically, that has not happened. And I'll come back to the final question, ma'am. Short of conflict, which obviously no country wants, and least of all India, we're not interested in conflict of any sort. What are the options India has vis-a-vis Bangladesh as of now, the present situation? What can India do?
Well, India has been very patient with Bangladesh. I think we have exercised what we described as strategic restraint. We, even in August 24, we said we are prepared to do business with you. Let's continue the good relationship. That was completely rejected. Then our Prime Minister met Md Yunus in Bangkok on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit. And at that time also, our Prime Minister made two important points, that we want to have the good relationship between India and Bangladesh. And that is based on this mutually beneficial trust that we want to build up. And it is essentially a people-to-people relationship, which you must allow this to continue. But given this was also rebuffed. So now it is very clear that the only option is to push strongly for free, fair, and inclusive elections. There should be international observers. All parties should be allowed to take part, and they should be held by a new caretaker government. And we are quite sure that any government which gets elected like this by the people of Bangladesh, in free, fair, and inclusive elections, we will be able to re-establish good relations with that government on a mutually beneficial basis, on the basis of mutual trust. So right now, we have to push for the earliest possible elections, free, fair, and inclusive.
I hope that happens, ma'am, because Bangladesh is a very important country, not only for India, but with Bangladeshi people themselves, because they have come out of so much struggle that they deserve all the support. And I would like to...
I want to make one last point. You talked about, America and China being on the same page. I don't think they're on the same page at all, because you're right that America is asserting itself, because we know, as everybody says, that soft coup or the regime change operation was backed by the Biden deep state. So America is in that continuity of that origin, trying to reassert or trying to assert its control. And there is even talk they have signed a non-disclosure agreement with Bangladesh, which prevents them from buying any more weapons from either China or Russia. Now, and of course, that implies buying it from USA. So we don't know about that. That's a non-disclosure agreement, but obviously that will affect the interests of China. So China, of course, at this present time, is biding its time. They're quiet. They're not saying anything. But yes, there is a pushback against China by America within Bangladesh, as there is within Pakistan as well. Let's see what happens on that. That seems to be another tussle that is very much there. Md Yunus has been to China. The foreign affairs advisor has been to China. They've had all kinds. He even made that very nasty statement about India's northeast while he was in China, addressing the businessmen, and all these things are there. But I think that we have to watch and see. But again, the bottom line is free, fair, and inclusive elections under a new caretaker government.
I endorse that appeal totally, ma'am. Free, fair, and impartial elections. Thank you so much. We'll have to conclude on that, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you for sparing time for us. Thank you.
Thank you.